All right, hello. I'm gonna try something a little bit different and new here. Try a video. We'll see how it works. I want to talk about a really great book that I read recently. I finished actually a couple weeks ago. Probably should have done this earlier so it was fresher in my mind. But that book is Brian McLaren's Life After Doom. Wisdom, what does it say? Wisdom and Courage for a World Falling Apart. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a very important book, I think. I definitely would recommend that folks go out and buy it and read it. It's kind of both depressing and inspiring. It centers on climate change as kind of what he sees as our doom scenario, and I don't disagree with that at all. It's applicable, though, to the general world situation. I mean, it's all connected. I was actually motivated to read the book not because of the climate change situation, but because of our political situation here in the United States, the recent presidential election, after which it just felt like, we were coming to apocalypse, end of the world. I mean, that's truly what it felt like for me. So so I read this book and to see what McLaren said, because I think McLaren has a lot of wisdom. And the book itself probably could be called, instead of Life After Doom, of course, it could be called Life Before Doom or Life During Doom, because we're not after doom yet. We don't know what's going to happen. This book is more about how do we deal with going into doom and surviving doom and preparing for doom. Those doom scenarios. Because really, I mean, when I think about apocalypse, seems like every generation thinks it's the apocalypse, right? But man, it sure seems like we are reaching a point in history where I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion, but we are running out of time as a species. And this book helps us to wake up to the seriousness of some of our problems. And I think the trick is that we want to be disturbed enough to be motivated to do something and to address these problems. But we don't want to be so overwhelmed as to fall into despair, so that we just go run and hide. And the book itself is pretty darn good. Each chapter ends with some reflection questions to help us think through the issues that McLaren talks about. So that would also make it great for a group read, book study, or whatever. The author suggests that you read it with a group, and I think it would work very well for that, especially if you're the kind of person that wants to talk through your emotions, and because you're going to have emotions when you read this book. It's in spots it's difficult to read. It is. So what McLaren sees here is a possibility of 4 scenarios. The climate crisis coming down to either a collapse of civilization and then a rebirth of some new, better civilization, a collapse, and then some kind of bare survival, whether, go back to the, medieval, we hang out in tents and caves, I don't know, what that exactly looks like. Collapse and we don't survive, extinction. We become a wasteland, planet Earth. Or really the first scenario I probably should have mentioned it as the first scenario, is the collapse avoidance. We get our crap together and we avoid any kind of collapse at all. So those are the 4 scenarios which he sees, and he talks about those throughout the book. And he doesn't know what's coming. We don't know what's coming. The book itself is divided into 4 parts, and each part has multiple chapters. So the first part is called A Path of Descent. Then comes a place of insight, a path of resilience, and then a path of agile engagement. So he talks about this as getting real about our situation, the path of descent, learning the facts, a place of insight, gaining knowledge, gaining insights into what's going on, understanding our situation better, a path of resilience, starting to bounce back, starting to learn what we can do, what we can't do, a path of agile engagement, adapting to the situation, doing, working, solving problems. And so that's from despair to potential hope. And that is the way the book goes. And I think that is the emotions that you have as you read it as well. And he talks about some of the problems that got us where we are today. He talks a lot about capitalism and the problems that has caused us. Capitalism and its calls for ever-increasing profit. Capitalism needs to have those quarterly profits go up and up and up, right? And so we as humanity, as a culture, need to redefine what success and progress looks like if we're going to survive. The pursuit of wealth at all costs just doesn't work. Progress requires, the way we define it now, progress requires constant expansion. And so we end up with overshoot. And McLaren talks about this a lot. Overshoot is using resources at an unsustainable rate. We're going to run out, whether it's next week or a month or 10 years or 100 years from now, we're going to run out of resources. And then what do? Right? Then we have that collapse. So part of this whole issue is our human addiction to energy, especially fossil fuels, but energy in general. And McLaren even talks about even if we weaned ourselves off of fossil fuels and started using renewable energy sources, that too has issues. They can be problematic as well. And he goes into those things. So the one quote I love in the book is, humans don't have an environmental problem. The environment has a human problem. And I think that is so, so true. So he uses that as kind of to suggest that we need to develop relationship with the earth. We need to get our priorities changed around. We need to renew a love affair with the earth, basically. And he points us back to indigenous wisdom. And again, I can't disagree with him. I think that's where we need to go. And he has some book recommendations for people to read, to kind of pursue that. I know I put a couple books on my to-read list. And he also gets into other, just new ways of thinking. Indigenous wisdom is a new way of thinking. He takes some scripture and shows us new ways to think about it and to interpret it. And I think that was wonderful. He talks about hope, ways that we can think about hope in different ways. To me, when he's talking about hope, he's talking about really wishful thinking versus real hope. Real hope motivates us to do things, to work for the future. Wishful thinking makes us want to sit back and believe that God is going to swoop in and save us, and that's not how it's going to work. Wishful thinking is not going to do anything for us. And that is a problem. If we call that hope, that's a problem with hope. So then the book eventually morphs into things we can do, right? He, like I said, he gives us books, recommendations, websites, ideas for further research and reflection, practical suggestions to help us consider what we're called to do next. And we don't know what's going to happen, but we can do things to help mitigate what might happen in the future. And whatever we do, however small it might be, is going to make a difference. And we each have our own role. We're each called to do different things. I might be called to do one thing. You might be called to do something else. And we can't get into the issues of comparing You know, why aren't you working on my issue? You should be, you know, we should all be working on this issue. No, you should be working on this issue. We all just need to work on what we are feeling called to work on. And McLaren also talks about the serenity prayer. And I think it's a great prayer for these times. The courage to change what we can, the strength to accept what we can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. Right? That's it. A couple of other things, really important points. He talks about the idea, should everything be saved? Are there things that shouldn't be saved? Capitalism. For me, as a minister, I'm thinking there are aspects of the church that don't really need to be saved. Maybe instead of saving some of these things, we should instead be creating something new, something better. He also talks about the idea of we need to get tougher. We need to be able to adapt. We also need to be able to center ourselves in the earth, to center ourselves in the peace of community, maybe, is what I would call it. Center ourselves in each other. Taking time to live in the present moment, because we might not have it for that much longer. So coming together to enjoy the beauty of what we have, to enjoy this life, to be joyful, to be kind to each other. Because one thing he points out that I think is also so true is that faced with the end, what kind of person, what kind of people do we want to be? If we know that we're going to die, if we know that we're moving to extinction, do we want to be hateful, violent people? Or do we want to be loving, kind people? If we know that the earth is, in humanity, is going under next week, do we want to go out and have a free-for-all, shooting our neighbors? Or do we want to group together and be kind and support each other and loving? What legacy do we want to leave? If aliens come a week after we've destroyed ourselves, what kind of legacy do we want them to find? Anyway, that's the book. Highly recommend you run out and buy a copy. If you're not prepared to be depressed a little bit, at least, maybe don't buy a copy. But if you're prepared to face up to reality and start thinking about what can we do to save this earth, then yeah, buy a copy. And let's do it. Thank you so much.